The sky was just starting to pale when his horse gave out beneath him. Steam rose off the gelding's flanks, breath heavy as smoke from a dying fire. The cowboy slid from the saddle, legs stiff from hours in the stirrups, and lifted his eyes eastward. A thin line of gold split the horizon. Behind him, men were still riding, men with guns, men who'd sworn no black bride would ever live to see her wedding day in Dodge. He'd ridden all night, through thorn and dust, carrying her toward safety. But now, as the sun edged higher, his strength was gone. And that was when she stepped forward, her voice steady as steel. She wasn't the one in need of saving anymore. At sunrise, it was her turn to save him. But how in God's name had they come to this? 3 days earlier, Dodge City had been its usual mix of dust, whiskey, and menace. The cattle drives had ended, leaving the streets crowded with men flush with pay and looking for trouble. The cowboy, Tom Redden by name, wasn't much different from the rest, except he carried himself quieter. Folks said Tom had the kind of eyes that measured a man, same as he'd measure a horse, steady, appraising, giving nothing back until he knew what he was dealing with. That evening, Tom leaned against the hitching post outside the Longhorn Saloon when he saw her for the first time. She stood on the boardwalk, wrapped in a simple traveling cloak, face half shadowed by her bonnet. Her skin marked her different in a place where difference wasn't welcome, and every pair of eyes along Front Street took notice. A group of drovers stopped mid-laugh. 2 gamblers whispered. Someone spat tobacco in the dirt. Tom didn't move, he just watched. Word travels fast in a town like Dodge, and trouble travels faster. By the time the woman stepped into the saloon, whispers had already beaten her there. A colored bride, come looking for a preacher, alone, unguarded, unsigned. The air thickened, chairs scraped, a drunk barked a laugh too loud. She ignored them all, walking straight to the bar. Her voice was soft but firm. I'm here to meet Reverend Hall. I was told he'd perform a wedding. The barkeep blinked, confused. The drunk laughed again. Someone muttered a slur. Tom pushed off the post and went inside. He didn't know why. Maybe it was the way she held herself. Chin up, eyes forward, like a woman who knew the weight of stairs and carried them anyway. Reverend Hall don't drink here, the barkeep finally said. You'd best wait at the church, but she never made it that far. 3 men rose from their table near the back, boots heavy on the floorboards. One wore a deputy's badge, though Tom knew he'd never worn a conscience. You lost, gal? The deputy sneered. Ain't no preacher in Dodge gonna tie you up with one of our kind. The saloon went quiet. Tom's hand went to the brim of his hat, slow, measured. He hadn't planned to get in the middle of anything that night. He'd planned on whiskey, a hand of poker, maybe sleep if the dice of luck landed right. But as the deputy reached for the woman's arm, Tom found himself stepping between them. She ain't lost, Tom said, voice low. She's where she meant to be. The deputy blinked, then smiled sharp as a knife. And who the hell are you? Just a man who don't take kindly to cowards ganging up on a lady. That single word, lady, hung heavy. Some men chuckled, some scowled. The deputy's smile faltered. The woman's eyes flicked to Tom, searching. For what? Ally, savior, fool, he couldn't tell, but she didn't look away. They left the saloon together, though not before Tom had to stare down 3 pistols and 1 bottle thrown in his direction. Outside, the air was easier to breathe. You didn't have to, she said finally. Her voice was softer than he expected. Didn't seem right to leave you standing there. She hesitated, then pulled her cloak tighter. My name is Eliza Carter. I came here to be married. Tom waited, silent. The man I was meant to wed, her throat caught. He was killed on the trail 2 days back, ambushed. I don't know why the Lord spared me, but I can't turn back now. His family waits. His land needs a name to hold it. If I return alone, it's all gone. Everything he built, everything he died for. Tom studied her in the moonlight. She was no helpless girl. Her hands were steady. Her eyes carried sorrow. Yes, but also something harder. Resolve. You got kin? He asked. None that matter. And friends in Dodge? Her silence was answer enough. It was madness and Tom knew it. But by the time dawn came, he found himself saddling his horse with her bundle tied behind. She had asked nothing of him, not directly, but when the night riders came, 3 men with kerchiefs over their faces, one carrying the deputy's badge, Tom was the one who fired first. That was the start of the ride, a ride that would stretch across prairies and rivers, through thorn and storm, carrying them towards safety that seemed to move farther away with every mile. The men hunting them weren't just after blood, they were after the idea of her, of a woman who dared claim a life outside the lines the world had drawn for her, and Tom, he didn't rightly know why he kept riding. He told himself it was debt, or duty, or plain stubbornness, but deep down he felt something else stirring, something dangerous, something he couldn't name. By the second night their shadows stretched long across the plains, and the hunters were closing in. Eliza carried a secret she hadn't spoken, one that weighed heavier than the bundle strapped to Tom's saddle. And when the firelight flickered low and her voice finally broke the silence, Tom realized the danger was far greater than he'd ever imagined. The second night found them tucked into a coulee of cottonwoods where the wind went quiet and the stars came in thick as spilled salt. Tom built a small fire, low as a candle, careful with the light. Coyotes called from the far side of the creek, thin and hungry.
He kept his hat brim forward and his back to the trunk, Winchester laid across his thighs. Eliza sat close to the glow, hands out to the heat, the cloak pulled snug around her shoulders. They hadn't said much all day. Miles will do that to you, turn words into something heavy. You only lift when you must. The gelding twitched in his sleep. Somewhere out there, horses stamped and leather creaked. Men keeping a distance for now. Tom didn't need to see them to know they were there. Trouble has a shape, a feel, a weight in the air. He'd been born with a nose for it. Eliza stared into the flame as if there were a map inside. I need to tell you why they're hunting me, she said at last. Tom didn't look up. He could feel the moment open, like a door you don't trust but step through anyway. All right. The man I was to wed was named Josiah Bell. She spoke each word like she was placing it careful on the table. He came up from Texas after the war, worked rail, then freights. Not
much to look at, but steady. 3 months ago I signed a promise to marry him. Not for romance, for land. Tom finally glanced over. Whose land? Hers, she said, nodding at the world past the fire. Ours, if we claimed it right. A colony, a place the law would have to see when it came sniffin'. Black folks headed west, been building small, quiet communities, planting roots like fence posts. Josiah bought a half section near the Solomon River. Good water, gentle slope, buffalo grass thick as carpet. He set it up in paper so that a family, his words, a family, would hold the deed free and clear. Marriage was required by the banker for a joint title transfer before Winter assessed the claims. You were to be that family, Tom murmured. Eliza nodded. If we wed by the first Sunday after harvest and registered at the county seat, the deed would be ours, and the syndicate that's been swallowing land like a locust swarm could go bark up someone else's cottonwood. Tom spit into the dust. Slow. Let me guess the name on the other side of this thing. You already met his teeth, Eliza said. Deputy Burke Daly rides for Martin Kellum. Kellum's bought half the feedlots from Hayes to Abilene, and he wants the river tracks for winter grain. He doesn't care what color the hands are who get pushed off, so long as they go. Tom could picture Kellum's slick boots, clean fingernails, a smile that never reached his eyes. Men like that didn't draw guns, they hired them. Eliza's voice. Josiah and I were headed to the preacher when the ambush hit. He shoved the packet at me, the deed, a letter from the banker, the rail receipt, and told me to ride like daylight was chewing at my heels. I never saw him again. Her eyes were flint when she looked up. I would have made it, Tom. I would have made it alone, except, she trailed off. Except what? She turned her palm to the fire and opened her fingers. In the orange light lay a small strip of ribbon, blue and faded, knotted around a plain brass ring. This belonged to my father, she said. He used to say a name on paper is one kind of protection. A vow you say out loud is another. That Deputy Daly, he ain't chasing me for sport. Kellum's lawyers will argue a woman alone can't secure a joint title made for a marriage never sealed. They'll turn the clock into a knife. If I don't stand before a preacher with a husband by Sunday, my claim dies at noon. She closed her fist firm. That's 3 mornings from now. Hayes City Courthouse opens on the bell. Tom let the wind speak a while. The coyotes had gone quiet. Somewhere upstream, a frog popped the surface like a cork. He rubbed the Winchester's loading gate with his thumb. You kept one piece back, he said. Eliza tilted her head. You said you would have made it alone except what? He watched her face. There's more. She pulled the cloak tighter, and when she spoke again, it was barely above the fire's crackle. I ain't just holding a deed, Tom. I'm holding a name that will get men killed. Josiah was ready to stand in front because the man behind this paper, behind the banker and the colony, doesn't want his name spoken. Kellum's not the top of the chain. He's a glove. The hand inside belongs to a judge sitting in Topeka, who's been granting grazing rights. He's got no business granting. Her mouth hardened. If I get to Hayes and register that deed, if it holds long enough to take to the circuit court, the names tied to it come out in the open. That's why Daly's riding with a badge and not a rag over his face. They want the law to look the other way while it swallows me. Tom felt the miles already behind them press all at once on his shoulders. Judge in Topeka, of course. Power sat in rooms with carpet while men bled in dirt fixing the consequences. He kept his face plain, but inside something dark and familiar woke up. He'd seen this play before during his time scouting for the Union cavalry, when cattle and railheads turned the map into a checkerboard and the poor got used as pieces. "We'll make haze by Sunday," he said. "If the horses hold." "They won't," Eliza said, not unkind, not carrying two. He studied her a long beat. "You expect me to turn back?" She met his stare. "I expect you to think about what this costs. Men like Kellum write their threats with ink first, then blood. I don't want yours." Tom looked down at his hand. The right was steady as ever. The left showed a faint tremor if you knew how to look. He flexed it once and stilled it. "All right," he said. "We start before moonset. There's a ford on the smoky hill where the rocks make a shallow run. We'll cut west, keep the creek to our left and pray for cloud cover." Eliza nodded, relief like a shadow across her face. There, then gone. She reached into a satchel and drew out the packet. "If I fall," she said, "you take it and ride until the horse does the dying for you. You put it in a preacher's hand, and you make him read the date out loud where everyone can hear." Tom took the packet. It had the weight of a Bible and a pistol both. They stamped the fire and rubbed the ashes cold. The gelding snorted, ears twitching. Tom slid the rifle into its scabbard and tied the packet under the saddle skirt where a man would have to gut the animal to find it. "If they come on us hard," he said, "you drop to the creek bed and follow the willow line. The water will lift our Don't fire unless you mean to kill. A warning shot is wasted charity out here." Eliza's jaw set. "I don't warn men like Daly." They moved under a sifting of starlight, the prairie opening before them like a dark lake. Tom's mind ticked through distances, rises, the angle of the moon, every lesson the plains had beaten into him. The wind carried a smell he didn't like, wood smoke where there shouldn't be any. A day's ride off. Behind them hoofbeats stitched together for a moment, then scattered like quail. He knew a feint when he heard one. Someone was peeling out ahead to cut them off at the ford. "You hear it?" he asked. "I hear them trying to choose how we die," Eliza said. He almost smiled. "Ain't their decision yet." Near midnight, they came upon a lone soddy window patched with oiled paper, a lantern burning low behind it. Tom guided the horse wide. A dog's bark chased them, thin and lonely. The road bent south, then they kept moving, slow when the land rose, quicker when it dipped. No more talking than breath demanded. Just before dawn, the smoky hill flashed in the half-light, a ribbon of pewter with ice skimming its edges. Frost crusted the grass underfoot, making it crunch like old bone. Tom slid from the saddle and walked the gelding to the waterline, testing stones with his boot. He didn't like rivers in half-light. Too easy to miss what's waiting. He found the run a series of flat rocks like a broken stairway, and turned to wave Eliza forward. That's when the world snapped taut. A splash below the bend, a horse snorting hard, then the soft, unmistakable click of a rifle's hammer cocked to full. Tom's body moved before the sound finished. He shoved Eliza down behind the willow tangle and spun, Winchester up. "Morning, Redden," a voice called, cheerful as poison. Burke Daly rode his sorrel into view. Two men fanned behind him on the sandbar, long coats hanging, hats low. "Was hoping we'd catch you here. Rivers make men honest. They can't pretend there's a road nobody knows about." Tom sighted along the barrel and kept his breathing slow. The men behind Daly weren't amateurs. One had his carbine slung low, but already snug to shoulder. The other had a sharp's bad news at distance. The sorrel tossed its head, fogging the cold air with breath. "You've got the papers on you," Daly said. "Hand 'em over and maybe you keep your kneecaps." "I'm a reasonable man." Tom said nothing. He measured the space to the cottonwoods, the cover on the far bank, the depth of the water by the way it whispered over rock. He could drop Daly easy. It was the long gun on the left that would kill him after. "I'll count to 3, Daly said, like he was offering grace. "Then we punch daylight through your jacket." Eliza's hand found Tom's boot. He glanced down. She wasn't afraid. No, not exact. There was a coiled calm in her eyes he hadn't seen before, like a storm deciding where to land. "One," Daly said. Tom's mind split into two trails, one where he rushed the ford and died in the middle, and one where he stood and maybe took two with him, and left Eliza to run with a river at her back. He hated both. 2. The gelding shifted, reading Tom's shoulders, ready to jump on the squeeze of a knee. Tom eased pressure in the stirrup and angled his body to mask Eliza from the sharp's line. He felt her hand let go. 3. The crack didn't come from Daly's rifle. A shot split the dawn from the willow tangle at Tom's feet, loud as God's own hand slamming the sky. The man with the sharps jerked and pitched forward into the river, his hat cartwheeling away. Before Tom could track the second sight, another shot barked fast, precise, and the carbine man yelped, his weapon spinning out of his grip as he clutched a bleeding hand. Daly's grin vanished. He kicked the sorrel to the side and fired wild. Bark exploded from the cottonwood over Tom's head. Tom dropped to a knee and put a round where Daly had just been. The deputy swore, ducked again, and yanked his horse behind a drift of rock. Tom looked down in a slice of stunned quiet, because he knew what he'd heard and what he was seeing. Eliza lay half on her side, calm, breath even, the tiny pistol in her grip steady as a resting heart. She'd tucked herself into the willow brake, angled for the reflection off the water, and used the river's skin as a mirror to lay her shots. Daly spat. "Well, hell," he said, half to himself. "She bites." "More than that," Tom said, voice flat. He rose, sighted, and fired again. The round spent itself on rock. Daly flinched but held. "Listen close, Redden," Daly called, desperation gaining a foothold. "There's a dozen more men upriver. You don't get out of this. You hand the woman and the papers over now. I swear I'll get you a doctor when they're done with your legs." Tom's teeth clicked once in the cold and then settled. He looked toward Eliza. She'd already palmed another cartridge from somewhere in that cloak, and was thumbing it into the pistol with the kind of economy you only learn when bullets have already passed your ears in another life. He understood then. She wasn't waiting for rescue. She wasn't a burden strapped to his saddle. She was a storm he'd underestimated. The sunrise hit the river, and the whole ford flashed white. "Tom," she said, voice even, "on my shot, take the horse and cut for the far cottonwood. Don't stop to argue, and you." Eliza's eyes went to the rock that shielded Daly. "I'll make him choose whether he loves his badge more than his blood." The sorrel stamped. Daly leaned out to fire again. Eliza breathed in and held it, held everything, the cold, the fear, the righteous anger, and set her sights on a sliver of deputy showing between hat brim and rock. Tom felt the world narrow to the twitch of her finger. She exhaled, and the pistol spoke. The shot cracked clean, sharper than the cold itself. Deputy Burke Daly's hat spun into the air like a crow startled from the brush. He reeled back, clutching at his ear where Eliza's bullet had shaved a line of skin. For a heartbeat, the river seemed to hush like the prairie itself had stopped to listen. Then hell broke loose. Tom slapped the gelding's flank, urging him forward into the shallows. Water splashed high, freezing as it kissed his face. Daly cursed, firing blind. Chips of stone spat up around Tom's boots. Eliza squeezed off another round, forcing Daly's men to duck. "Ride," she barked. Tom swung into the saddle, dragging her up with a single arm. The gelding lunged, hooves hammering against slick rocks. Bullets whined overhead, one smacking the water so close it hissed into steam. Tom hunched low, shielding Eliza with his frame. They hit the far bank, mud sucking at the horse's legs, and tore into the cottonwoods before Daly could draw a bead. They didn't stop until the trees swallowed them whole. Tom pulled the gelding behind a low ridge, chest heaving, gun still hot in his grip. Eliza slid down, cloak soaked, pistol tucked neatly back beneath the fabric like it had never left her hand. "Hell," Tom muttered, spitting mud. "You shoot like you've been doing it all your life." Eliza's eyes flickered, something unreadable behind them. "My father taught me. South Carolina didn't forgive women for being black and alone. A gun's the only voice men respect when they've already decided yours don't count." Tom let that settle, heavy as the dawn mist. He'd thought of her as determined, but now he saw a steel that ran deeper, forged by years of survival he couldn't imagine. Don't look at me like I'm a surprise, she added, sharper now. I told you I didn't come west to play house. I came to claim what's mine. Tom gave a small nod. Then you'll have it. But we got riders ahead, and Daly won't lick his wounds for long. By noon the prairie stretched wide again, miles of rolling grass, broken by ravines and dry creeks. The wind carried grit that stung the eyes. Tom kept the gelding at a trot, careful not to burn him out. Every so often, he'd swing from the saddle and press his ear to the ground. Each time, the rumble of hooves drew nearer. They're circling us, Tom said after the third check. Not chasing straight, they're fanning wide, trying to herd us toward open ground. Eliza shifted in the saddle, her hand brushing the packet hidden beneath the skirt. Toward Kellam's men, toward whoever's paid to wait, Tom said grimly. They came upon a line of buffalo bones bleached white by years of sun, scattered like giant ribs across a gully. Tom led them through, careful of the brittle crunch beneath hooves. A hawk wheeled overhead, its shadow skimming their backs. You ever think about turning back? Eliza asked suddenly. Tom kept his eyes forward. Too late for that. Men like Daly don't forget faces. Even if I rode the other way, he'd hunt me to prove a point. And if you fall, then you keep riding, Tom said. Same as you told me. Her silence was answer enough. Toward evening, the land funneled into a dry creek bed, walls steep and Tom didn't like it too easy for rifles to pin them down, but there was no other way forward without losing half a day's ride. Halfway through, the gelding's ears snapped forward. Tom felt it a second later, the wrong kind of quiet. He raised his hand, signaling halt. Then came the shout. Drop the rifle, Redin. Men rose from the rim on both sides. 6, maybe 7. Daly wasn't among them, but Tom recognized Kellam's brand on their gear. One wore a bowler hat too fine for a hired gun, which told Tom everything. These weren't just riders, they were enforcers, paid. Give us the girl and the papers. Bowler hat called down. And you can walk. Tom leaned close to Eliza. You see the cut on that wall yonder? If we hit it fast, we might get clear. They'll shoot us to ribbons, she whispered. They'll shoot us either way. The gelding pawed, sensing the tension. Tom tightened his grip on the Winchester. On my mark, he said. The first shot came from above. A warning. Dust sprayed near Eliza's boots. She flinched, but her jaw stayed tight. Tom swung the rifle up and fired without hesitation. The man in the bowler hat toppled backward, arms flailing, his hat spinning into the gully. Gunfire erupted from both sides, echoing like thunder in the tight space. Tom spurred the gelding hard, arrows of pain shooting through his legs as they leapt forward. Bullets sparked off stone, one grazing the gelding's flank, but the beast lunged with desperate power. Eliza clung low, her pistol spitting flame at the ridge. 2 men dropped back, surprised by her ferocity. The gully's end loomed, a narrow cut between jagged walls. Tom bent flat, trusting the gelding's muscle, and they burst through in a spray of dust and flying stones. Behind them curses rang out, but the chase faltered. The men hadn't expected resistance this sharp. They didn't stop until darkness wrapped the prairie. Tom slid from the saddle, hands shaking from more than exhaustion. Eliza joined him, face pale but eyes still burning. You killed the man in the bowler hat, she said. He'd have killed us both without blinking. She studied him for a long moment. Do you ever wonder if each bullet we fire ties us tighter to the noose? The law won't see a deputy chasing a woman. They'll see us murdering white men for sport. Tom dropped onto the grass, running a hand through his dust-caked hair. I learned a long time ago the law don't ride for men like me, and sure as hell not for women like you. The only judge that matters now is the one in Topeka, and he's already sold his soul. Eliza crouched beside him, cloak brushing the dirt. Then why keep helping me? You could have walked away and dodged. Tom met her eyes. In the dim light, they gleamed with something fierce. Because I've seen too many men stand aside, and because I think you'd ride through hell itself for that deed. Makes a man wonder if maybe it's worth it. For the first time she smiled, not soft but sharp, almost daring. Then we'll ride through hell together. That night, the wind shifted. Smoke drifted from the west, carrying the scent of burned wood and cattle hide. Somewhere out there, Kellam's men were driving a ring tighter. Tom and Eliza weren't just running anymore. They were being funneled toward a reckoning. Neither could dodge, and by dawn the prairie itself would turn against them. The night wind carried the smell first, burnt mesquite, animal hide, and something sour beneath it. Tom knew that smell. He'd ridden through Kansas when raiders set fire to homesteads just to starve families out. Smoke was a language out here, and Kellam's men were speaking it loud. We're closing in. Eliza pulled her cloak tight, eyes narrowing as the glow on the horizon swelled. They're burning us toward open ground, she said. Tom spat into the dirt, jaw clenched. Smoke makes rabbits run. Easier to shoot when they break cover. He checked the gelding's girth strap and loaded his Winchester with a rhythm that calmed him, though his stomach knotted. They were tired, horse, man, woman all, and exhaustion kills as quick as a bullet if you don't respect it. They pressed west, hugging low rises for cover. Twice, Tom stopped to check the ground. Both times he found fresh prints, men spreading like a fan tightening the circle. Kellam wasn't leaving this to chance. By midnight, they hit a shallow ravine lined with wild plum and chokecherry. Tom dismounted and led the gelding down, letting him drink from the trickle of water that cut the clay. The animal trembled under his hand, foam flecking its mouth. Tom stroked its neck. Easy, boy. You'll see sunrise if I've got breath left. Eliza crouched nearby, pistol resting across her knees. They'll be on us before long, she whispered. Tom nodded. Which means we don't wait. We pick where we make our stand. Her eyes snapped up. Stand? You said haze by Sunday. And we'll still try, but running blind into their fire's a fool's game. Better to choose the ground, make them pay for every step. She studied him, then gave the barest nod. Then choose. They followed the ravine north, until it bent toward a cluster of cottonwoods. Tom slowed, raising a hand. A lantern flickered among the trees too still to be a campfire. He motioned Eliza down and crept forward. At the center stood a wagon, canvas pale in the moonlight. A man in a dusty coat leaned against the wheel, hat tipped low. His hands were empty. Redden? The man called softly. That you? Tom froze. He knew that voice. Jed Tyler, once a scout in his cavalry unit, now a drifter, who sold his gun to whoever filled his cup. Tom stepped into the lantern's edge, rifle loose but ready. Jed. Jed smiled thin, eyes sliding to the shadows behind Tom. Heard you been riding with a bride worth more than gold. Thought maybe we could work something out. Eliza appeared at Tom's shoulder before he could stop her. Jed's eyes widened, not at her face. He'd expected that. But at the pistol steady in her. You picked the wrong side, Jed, Tom said flatly. Jed chuckled, but there was no mirth in it. Ain't no sides, Tom, just winners and graves. Kellam's offering land, cattle and coin. More than you ever got chasing scraps. He shifted, hand brushing the butt of his revolver. Step aside. I'll take her gentle. Papers too, you ride off. Nobody hunts you. Eliza's voice cut the night like a whip. You'd sell your soul for a man who burns families out of their homes. Jed's smile faltered. Tom saw the tremor in his jaw, a man caught between greed and shame. But shame was a weak tether on a soul like Jed's. Tom raised the Winchester. Last chance. Jed's hand twitched. The night exploded. The first shot came from Jed, but his aim was sloppy. Fear makes for poor shooting. Tom's return round struck true, slamming Jed back against the wagon. Eliza fired too, her shot tearing through the lantern, plunging the grove into darkness. The gelding screamed, rearing against the sudden noise. Tom grabbed the reins, pulling Eliza behind him as more shots cracked from the trees. Jed hadn't been alone. Figures surged from the shadows, rifles flashing. Run, Tom barked. They bolted, weaving between trees as bullets tore bark and splinters rained. Eliza fired twice, forcing the gunman to scatter. Tom led her down a dry wash, sliding on loose rock. They tumbled hard, breath ragged, hearts slamming against ribs. Above, voices cursed,
but the gunman hesitated. Too dark, too easy to lose footing. Tom pressed his back to the clay wall, Eliza beside him, cloak streaked with dirt. He could feel her trembling, not from fear, but from sheer will holding against exhaustion. "That friend of yours?" she asked between breaths. "Was," Tom said grimly. They didn't speak again until the stars shifted, and the wind picked up, carrying smoke thicker now. Tom kept them moving, skirting low ground until the prairie flattened again. By then the gelding's steps faltered, each one a battle. Tom knew the beast couldn't carry them much farther.
At dawn, they found a line of abandoned dugouts near a dried creek. Crumbling walls and broken chimneys marked where settlers had given up the fight. Tom led the gelding into the shade of a half-standing roof. "We rest here," he said. Eliza sank against the wall, cloak wrapped tight, pistol still near her hand. Her eyes fluttered, but didn't close. "They won't stop," she murmured. "No," Tom agreed, crouching beside her. "But neither will we." As the sun rose, casting the ruins in pale light, Tom studied her. Dirt smudged her cheeks, hair tangled, cloak torn at the hem, but she looked steady as bedrock. He wanted to ask why she trusted him, why she hadn't fled when Jed offered her an easier deal. Instead, he said, "You ever think this ain't about land? That maybe it's about proving something?" Eliza's eyes opened, sharp and alive. "Of course it is. If I plant my feet and claim what's mine, I show every man who thinks I should bend that I won't. If I fall, they'll say, 'See, we told you she couldn't.' But if I stand," she leaned forward, voice low and fierce, "if I stand, maybe someone else believes they can too." Tom felt something stir deep in his chest, a heat he hadn't let himself feel in years. Respect, admiration. Something stronger, more dangerous. He looked away, jaw tight. "Then we stand." But standing was about to get harder, because even as they caught their breath in the ruins, even as the gelding shivered in the shade, hoofbeats rolled like thunder across the plains. Daly had found their trail again, and this time he wasn't alone. A dozen riders swept toward the dugouts, rifles flashing in the morning light. At sunrise, the fight for land, for justice, for each other, would come to its reckoning, and only one of them might walk away. The first rays of dawn set the dugout walls glowing red, like the prairie itself was on fire. Tom crouched in the doorway, Winchester tight in his grip. Across the plain, a dozen riders came hard, dust boiling up behind them. Daly led the charge, hat bandaged around his ear, where Eliza's bullet had kissed him. His grin was feral, half mad. "Time's up, Redden," he bellowed, voice carrying across the still air. "You can't hide a woman from the world. We'll bury her, bury you, and take what's ours." Tom didn't answer. He sighted the lead rider beside Daly, and dropped him clean out of the saddle. The rest slowed, guns barking, bullets chewing clay from the dugout wall. Eliza crouched beside him, cloak cast off, pistol steady. Her face was calm, almost too calm. Tom glanced at her. "You don't have to." She cut him off with a sharp shake of her head. "I do." The riders fanned out, circling like wolves. Two came from the left, trying to flank. Tom fired, taking one down, but the other slid from his saddle and scrambled toward the dugout with a revolver ready. Eliza moved before Tom could. Her pistol snapped, and the man crumpled against the dirt wall, sliding silent. Smoke filled the dugout. The gelding screamed, eyes rolling, hooves striking. Tom knew the horse couldn't stand this long. "They'll smoke us out," he muttered. "Then we don't stay penned." Eliza shot back. Her words lit a spark. Tom yanked the saddlebag from the gelding and shoved the packet into Eliza's hands. "No matter what happens, you ride. You keep that safe." Her eyes burned. "Not without you." Tom almost smiled. "Then you'd better cover me." He shoved the door wide and burst out, Winchester blazing. The riders hadn't expected a charge. Two fell back, startled, giving Tom the break he needed. He vaulted onto the gelding's back, hauling Eliza up behind him. "Hold on," he barked, spurring the animal into a dead sprint. Bullets chased them, whining past ears, tearing clumps of grass. The gelding leapt a ditch,
stumbled, then caught its stride again, lungs rattling like a broken bellows. Daly's shout cut through the chaos. "Don't kill him. Take the girl." That single line burned through Tom like acid. He twisted in the saddle, fired blind, forcing the pack to scatter. Eliza clung tight, pistol firing in quick, precise bursts. Each shot forced another rider wide, buying them precious feet. Ahead, a low ridge rose against the sunrise. Tom knew the land, knew beyond it lay the open trail to Hayes, but the gelding staggered, foam thick on its chest. The beast wouldn't make another mile. "We stop here," Tom growled, sliding off and steadying the horse. He pulled Eliza behind a boulder at the ridge's crest. "If they want us, they'll pay." The riders regrouped below, Daly waving his men forward. "Kill the cowboy. Bring me the woman." Eliza's jaw tightened. "He thinks I'm the prize." Tom chambered another round. "Then let's teach him he's wrong." The first wave came hard, 3 men charging straight up the ridge. Tom dropped one, Eliza winged another, and the third reached cover, only to catch a bullet when he peaked too high. The air filled with gun smoke and screams, but for every man that fell, another took his place. Ammunition ran thin. Tom counted his cartridges, 2 left. Eliza had 1. "They'll overrun us," Tom said, sweat stinging his eyes. Eliza's gaze drifted to the packet tucked at her side. She pressed it into Tom's chest. "If one of us gets through, it has to be you." Tom shoved it back at her fierce. "No, you're the one this fight's about. You're the one who makes it matter." Her eyes locked on his, searching, then softening with something deeper. "Then we both go or we both fall." The riders gathered for a final push, Daly at their head. He raised his pistol high, the sunrise flashing against its steel. And the charge thundered forward. Tom leveled his Winchester, for what might be the last time. But before he could fire, Eliza stood tall, cloak whipping in the wind, pistol steady. Her voice rang across the ridge, clear and fierce. "This land will be ours. Every bullet you fire only proves why we must take it." The words cut through the chaos like a blade. Some riders faltered, horses shying. The weight of her defiance, her refusal to bow, threw their certainty into doubt. Tom seized the moment. He fired his last round, dropping Daly's horse from under him. The deputy crashed hard, pistol flying from his grip. Before he could rise, Eliza's shot split the air and struck him square in the shoulder. Daly howled, clutching blood, rolling in the dust. The rest of Kellam's men wavered, leader down, sunrise blinding, and the bride they thought weak standing unbroken. One by one they turned their horses and fled. Silence fell, broken only by the gelding's ragged breathing. Tom lowered his rifle, empty now. Eliza's pistol sagged at her side. Daly writhed in the dust, cursing, but Tom didn't finish him. Killing was easy, leaving a man to live with his shame was harder. Eliza stood over him, cloak streaked with dirt, face shining in the dawn. "Tell Kellam," she said, voice steady, "that we are not his to burn. Tell him he'll never own what we plant in this soil." Daly spat, but his eyes told the truth, fear deep and raw. Tom took her arm, guiding her back to the gelding. The horse shuddered, near spent, but still stood. Together they mounted. "We've got a day's ride to Hayes," Tom said, "and a preacher waiting." Eliza looked east, where the sun blazed over the prairie, golden and unyielding. "Then let's ride." If you'd been there, if you'd seen the ridge at sunrise, the smoke, the dust, the deputy crawling, and the black bride standing with pistol in hand, you'd understand something plain. She didn't just save him, she saved the claim, the promise, the chance for something better than fear. And Tom Redden, a cowboy who'd thought himself drifting toward nothing, found himself bound to a purpose bigger than land or survival. Because at sunrise, when the prairie turned gold, the world saw who truly carried the strength to change it.